There we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Blind Eye Live. I'm your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media. And, let's jump into the rundown for the show. We're going to talk Suns Nuggets. That series is over. Actually done. Suns get the sweep on the Nuggets. But there's some controversy. We'll get into that. The Bucks have evened up the series against the Nets. Another big injury for the Nets. So we're going to talk about that. Have some other NFL thoughts. I have some other NBA playoffs thoughts. Also have some, probably going to talk a little NFL. Just some things I've been reading and some other opinions I've got. And, of course, I'm going to talk about the state of NBA referees after Suns-Nuggets Game 4, because that one's interesting. So, I guess we'll start off. Let's dive into the Suns-Nuggets series since it's done, and we'll go ahead and hit that. Suns won 115 to 125, 118 in Denver. To finish off the Nuggets. The Nuggets have completely revamped their rotation, changed things up drastically, starting Monte Morris, who had his best game, I think, of the playoffs last night. Because he had been really struggling. But yeah, there's that. Michael Porter Jr. had a bounce-back game. They slashed Paul Millsap's minutes. They played JaVale McGee finally got on the floor for an extended run and was fairly effective. The Suns were, once again, a very balanced team. Their bench didn't score a ton, but their starters did a really good job of putting points up on the board. Chris Paul and Devin Booker were both excellent. DeAndre Ayton had another fine game. Did a really good job, honestly, on Jokic again. He has really shown that the ability to play quality defense. And sometimes it's like you look at Jokic's stats, and his stats are good, but he definitely was slowed down compared to how he has played for most of this season. And for most of the series against the Blazers, Ayton did a fantastic job defensively in the series. Michael Bridges, really, really, really good the entire series. Jay Crowder, I think he might have played the most minutes on the team, or second most minutes on the team in the game last night. He's been, for the most part, very much a positive force defensively and spacing the floor for the Suns. But he had a really good game last night. The biggest thing people are going to be talking about is Jokic getting ejected. Which, notably, Ja Morant and who else was it that? Oh, and Trae Young were both very much like he shouldn't have been ejected for that, which is interesting considering, Ja Morant and Trae Young are kind of smaller, slight players. But, some of the young stars in the league piping up like, hey, Jokic shouldn't have been suspended or should not have been ejected from the game for that foul. Now, it was very obvious that it was a frustration foul from Jokic, and anyone who has watched the NBA for the last couple years notices that Jokic seems to be not a favorite of the refs. And one thing he struggled with, especially early in his career, and he still deals with this from time to time, is like when he's frustrated, he'll foul. And he's a big guy. And one thing that NBA referees are instructed to protect players, especially, and this has really been a big thing since like all the fights of the 90s, and then especially since the malice of at the Palace, that melee that spilled out into the stands. Referees, like, one of their jobs is to protect players, and I think the referees saw Jokic getting frustrated, and that was only Jokic's second foul of the game. Should he have been ejected? I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't have ejected him. However, if Jokic was frustrated, which he was, who's say he wouldn't have gotten more frustrated? I'm not saying Jokic would have committed a foul like that again or something worse, but the referees decided to, to yank him, whatever. Either way, yeet him out of there. And here's the thing, though. A lot of people are like, well, the Nuggets only lost by 7. They outscored the Suns in the fourth quarter. They could have won if Jokic hadn't have been kicked out of the game. That's possible. But Jokic was minus 10 during the game. Like, for whatever reason, when he was on the court, the Nuggets lost those minutes. Now, could he have flipped that around in the fourth quarter? Could he have flipped that around down the stretch had he not been kicked out of the game? Potentially. But I think the Suns would have won that game regardless. That definitely hurt. I think it'd be crazy to say that it didn't hurt their chances, but I wouldn't have ejected Jokic. But if Jokic didn't want to eject it, he shouldn't have committed a stupid foul. Just simply put. And I'm going to say, to a degree, this is one of my problems with NBA stars in general, or a certain subset of NBA stars in general, is they throw tantrums on the court, they pout, they commit frustration fouls, or just do stupid crap like this. Like, Jokic has had a history of this, although he's been better. Luka doesn't commit like the heinous or like the overly physical fouls like Jokic, but Luka complains so much, and he learned it from LeBron. He emulates LeBron in a lot of ways. He gets it from LeBron. They complain too much. They complain entirely too much. Chris Paul complains too much. Just to say, put someone else who's in that game. I don't know. To me, it's like, if you want to be expressive, and for a lot of these players are complaining about the refs. It's a self-fulfilling cycle of whatever, because the players complain about things, then the refs start calling things, but they call it against those guys as well. They get mad. It's just this. It's a perpetuating cycle. The tension between players and refs. Like, the refs throwing Jokic out's not helping anything, but to a degree, because of players complaining about guys not getting thrown out for stupid fouls and stuff like that, and fans complaining about players or like certain types of fouls, like clear path fouls, and other like truly just non-basketball play type fouls. This is what's going to happen. I mean, this kind of stuff's just going to happen. And the Nuggets weren't winning the series anyway. They weren't coming back out of a 3-0 hole. They weren't coming back and winning that game. Um, so let's protect players. As far as I think it's the way the refs lean there, and I'm not saying that they did that because they were thinking of like the situation in the series and whatnot, but the referees made a judgment call that Jokic was too dangerous to have on the court. It's like they're allowed to do that, and it sucks, but I'm actually not going to argue as hard as some people are complaining about it. But the Suns dominated, and I'm going to be honest, this team's playing so well as a unit. Their bench is kind of up and down right now. Cam Johnson's not shooting particularly great, and that's like his big calling card. And Dario Saric in the game last night had a rebound in like 14 minutes. Which is not great either. Like for a guy who was playing center. Like you need to grab a few boards. Luckily, Cameron Payne, their bench guard, and Torrey Craig got them 4 rebounds apiece. That helped. I think Cam Johnson had 2 or 3 rebounds, which he's longer than both Craig. He's not as physical as Craig, but he's longer than Craig, and he's definitely longer and more physical than Cam Payne. I also want to say Devin Booker got 11 rebounds last night, and Devin Booker has been rebounding the heck out of the basketball in the postseason, and definitely in this series. Like, I feel like almost every time I check like the box score to a Suns game, he's got like somewhere between like 7 and 11 rebounds. It's ridiculous. Like, Booker has had some iffy shooting, especially from outside the arc. Although, he is scoring well and he's doing some playmaking. Like, he's been playing good basketball. I think he's actually been really, playing some of the best defense of his career. Maybe the best defense of his career. But he's been really getting after it on the boards, and that I find really impressive. And Chris Paul is just... he wants it. And I'm going to be honest, whoever comes out of that... out of the Clippers Sun series. The Clippers Jazz series, which the Clippers are making a series out of this, and you can thank Reggie Jackson for that. But that series is going to be really fun. But on paper, if you're looking at these two teams, you'd kind of like if Mike Conley can get back healthy, that's going to help the Jazz in this series because not having him is hurting their rotation. But I don't know. Like on paper, you look at the Jazz's bench and you look at the Clippers bench, and it's like, and along with their stars, it's like they should probably have a little more ammo than the Suns right now. But the Suns starters are playing so well that I don't know. I'm. But this Clippers Jazz series is really good, and the Jazz, if the 3 ball's not falling for them, like, or should I say, if they're not shooting extremely well, I don't think it's going to be hard for them to win games the way the Clippers are scoring the ball right now. And Reggie Jackson's just come to life. I talked about it on the last show. But my goodness. Reggie Jackson's turning back to that last year in OKC. Well, his last, or not his last season, but because he got traded, I think at the deadline of 2014-15 maybe, but the 2013-14 season when Westbrook was dealing with some injury problems, that was Durant's MVP season. Jackson had some really big games I remember I got to see him against the San Antonio Spurs. Well, I got to see it was during Durant's like stretch where he was like scoring over 30 every game. Like he had like a record streak or whatever. Then I think James Harden has since broken, but he was just on that tear in the middle of the season. It was like a game in January. So I got to see them play, and Westbrook was out, but Jackson started. And Jackson, like, and the crazy thing was Durant had, like, arguably the most just nonchalant 35 points you've ever seen. But Jackson scored 27 in that game, and it was like he was just rocking the rim. Like, well, I say rocking the rim. He was attacking like a mad dog. Like, he was doing a Westbrook impersonation. And even down the stretch, it seemed like Jackson, like, it really seemed like the team kind of let Jackson really cook a lot. And he was a huge part of them winning that game. Because I think they beat the Spurs in that game. Or did they? I'm pretty sure they won. But Jackson had like 27 points, and he was really incredible. And I mean, this was, now 7.5 years ago. But in the playoffs, he actually helped save their season against the Grizzlies. Like, Durant and Westbrook went, like, I think Durant went 5 of 21. Westbrook went 6 of 24 in that game. And Jackson had 32 points. And, like, it was like a really big, and, they beat my Grizzlies, my favorite team. And of course went on to win that series, I think, right? Anyway, but has 32 points, and then he didn't even get to go to the press conference for that game, by the way. So this is interesting, and actually, I bet you. So I saw another YouTube channel, Secret Base, which used to be the SB Nation YouTube channel. I think those guys still work for SB Nation, but they call it Secret Base, the channel Secret Base. I think I saw that they put out a beef history video that's like Russell Westbrook and Reggie Jackson. And I bet you this is in it. So after that game, Durant and Westbrook did the podium for the press conference, even though Reggie Jackson outplayed them and won them that game with like the best game of his career, and they kept him off the podium. And I remember because like I watched that game, and I watched the press conference after. I thought it was really odd that they didn't let him get some shine, and they didn't want him to. Westbrook, and apparently already by that point, Westbrook and Reggie Jackson already had some beef. Because Reggie Jackson and he's got, actually, if anything, he's very much like Russell Westbrook in that he's extremely confident in his abilities. Very exuberant type guy. And very competitive. Extremely competitive. And apparently Westbrook would just go after Jackson in practices. Like, just literally try and just murder him in practices on the court. And and Jackson would, end up competing just as hard. And apparently that made Westbrook really angry or whatever. And Jackson wanted to start. He didn't say like over Westbrook like at the time, but he didn't. It's like I remember there was an interview where he mentioned that. Stop me if you've heard. Well, or I was gonna say stop me if you've heard this one before. But I mean, he believed that he should start. He was a young, confident player, and he had basically kind of hinted that Westbrook was in his way because they wouldn't start him at the 2. And because Jackson viewed himself as a point guard, obviously. So anyway, but there's this whole thing And I'm probably gonna go and watch that beef history video because I guarantee you they talk about all this stuff if they're doing a video on it. But Reggie Jackson's just having a big coming out or breakout party right now, and he's in a perfect situation because with the Pistons, it was like him and Andre Drummond a bunch of crap for most of his time there. In Oklahoma City, he was in a good situation, and like he'd close games alongside Westbrook and Durant a lot during that kind of stretch of time until like the year after that postseason. And Jackson, is basically like, I want to be a starter. I view myself as a starter caliber player. And over that summer, I mean, basically, it seemed like his agent was trying to get him out of Oklahoma City, and like he was basically saying, "I'm either make me a starter or trade me." And of course, he started 13 games while Westbrook was out. He missed the first 3 games to injury. Really missed the first 2 games. The third game, he said he was still dealing with the injury and he wasn't going to play. And then, but in the same practice session, I think it was like he had like some kind of big dunk. Like it was almost like he was basically, doing some kind of like, yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, they need me now. I'm going to send an extra game out. And his stats, like from a counting perspective, look good, but he shot like really poorly. Like I want to say he shot like under 42%. It was like somewhere between like 40 and 42% from the field, but he averaged like over 20 points. I think it was like 8 assists and like 5 rebounds. I think it was just short of 8 assists. During that stretch of games. Because, I looked up I did some research for the show because I wanted to talk about Reggie Jackson. I should have put that in the title. But I did some looking back on like these stretches. So I didn't just remember all of this from memory. I did do some research. I have a really good memory, but man. Anyway, once again, but Reggie Jackson's in a perfect situation now. He doesn't have like a big name guard sitting in front of him. He's the best point guard on his team, and he's definitely playing like it. Moving Pat Beverly to a bench role is great for them. Rajon Rondo's not even playing. They traded Lou Williams. Really, I think they were trying to get rid of Lou's contract, even though I can't remember if he only had 1 year left or he had 2, but like I think they were trying to get rid of Lou Williams' contract. To a degree, but you'd think it kind of felt like they were getting Rondo for the playoff run. He's not even playing. And they traded Lou Williams at 2 second-round picks, and Lou Williams is a useful guy. And he's been playing more minutes in the playoffs than Rajon Rondo. Actually, I haven't looked at any of the Hawks box scores, so I actually shouldn't say that. But, or at least should I say, I don't remember. I think I've looked at a couple of them, but I don't remember Lou Williams' stats. I didn't look that up. But Reggie Jackson's been playing great. He was really one of the main or biggest factors in winning Game 3 of the series. And, I mean, he was a big factor, which Paul George and Kawhi Leonard had huge games, or this last game especially. But Jackson was still solidly, like, their third best player. And not because other players aren't playing well. Like, Reggie Jackson's just outplaying other players on the team. Like, and honestly, I like how aggressive Tyronn Lue has been at attacking the Jazz. Like, he's playing a lot of Marcus Morris. Nicholas Batum is basically centers. Playing small balls, spreading out the floor, saying, like, we're not that worried about Gobert like destroying us on offense or anything. And Gobert had kind of a weak sauce game by his standards this last game. So I mean, if I'm being honest, like the Clippers, if Reggie Jackson keeps playing like this, the Clippers can absolutely win this series. But the series is about to go back to Utah because I think that was Game 4, or the last game was Game 4, I think. Am I wrong? Actually, I can look that up right now. Let's pop over to ESPN.com for a sec. What is that headline? Dan Marino and Tua Tagovailoa leading Dolphins to a Super Bowl title. I hope he does. Okay, that's a starring headline. Okay, no, that was Game 3. So I was just thinking about the last game. But, oh yeah, it was the Game 2 loss that the Jazz beat the Clippers by 6. Like, Jackson kept them in that game. But, so the Clippers have a chance to tie the series tonight. And that was kind of the interesting thing. So, in looking at Jazz Clippers, Game 2, the Jazz shot the lights out, shot over 50% from the field. And I think I talked about this maybe on the show Friday or on the last show. The Jazz shot like 50% from the field, but I think it was like 56% from the field, like 53% from 3, and they won by 6 points. And it wasn't like the Clippers got like a ton more free throws, but that was one of the advantages that helped them. I think they shot like it was like they shot like 2 more free throws and hit 5 more, or maybe it was 7 more free throws and hit 5 more, or they shot 5 more free throws and hit 7 more. Or it was some like big difference like that, and that was what kind of allowed the Clippers to gain back ground. But they still lost by 6. Well, in Game 3, the Clippers destroyed the Jazz. The Jazz shot, and their percentages were slightly worse than the Clippers in that game, because the Clippers in Game 3, I think, shot like 48% from the floor and like 36.5% from 3. But that was Game 2. In Game 3, the Jazz shot like, I think it was 35% from 3. I think it was like 45% from the field, 46. And then the Clippers shot like 57% from the field or something like that, and like 53% from 3. And torched them by like, what was it, 122 to like 106, 125 to 106. Like it was a huge margin of victory in comparison. And it was just one of those things. It's like the Jazz have to shoot like out of their minds to beat the Clippers on a night where they just kind of have a ho-hum game. Or at least that's what it looked like. Because when those roles were reversed, the Clippers blew them out. So we're going to see. The Jazz are definitely missing Conley. And one of the big reasons they got blown out in Game 3 was Clarkson did not have a great night. And he cratered the team. Like, if he's not scoring, like in Game 2 that they won, he scored, I think it was 24 points, and was still minus 10 in a game they won by 6. So, regardless of Clarkson's scoring, his defense is horrendous. Or at least his defensive impact looks horrendously bad. And obviously, it can depend on who you're on the court with, but once again, I'm looking at who he's on the court with, and it's like, if you're scoring that many points, and I'm looking at the players who were torching them, and it's like Reggie Jackson, and I'm basically left to assume it's like, well, that's probably because of Clarkson. So, but anyway, yeah, so the Clippers and Jazz are playing tonight. Hawks Sixers have their game 4 tonight. Sixers, of course, won game 3 in Atlanta after they split the first 2 games. So the Sixers have gotten back home court in the series, like that home court advantage. And I kind of expect, with Embiid back, I expect him to beat or win the next 2 games against the Hawks. We have Stephen A. sounding off again. He's sounding off about everything. Honestly, it to me, it feels like ESPN is becoming the Stephen A. Smith network. And it's kind of annoying. Like, he's not that entertaining. Like, he's mostly just a blowhard. You know what? Wait, what is this article here? How the Nuggets should approach the offseason. Yeah. Actually, let's see if this shows, like, the video of Jokic getting ejected. I love how I have to sit through, like, a full TV ad for, like, a short internet video. Like, I mean, I get the site has ads or whatever, but it's like, and this is a bigger clip, but, like, I'll have to watch I've had to watch ads on here that are longer than the highlights. Let's see. So, I can't remember if I've got this to where, like, y'all can hear it or not, but basically, so Jokic during the press conference after the game said that he was trying to commit a hard foul to kind of change the energy, change the mood for his team. He didn't mean to, like, hit him in the face, and he didn't think that he actually, like, really got him in the face. But this is the thing. He swung his arm like he was trying to hit someone. Guess what? In the NBA, if you swing at someone, that's an automatic ejection. So once again, so he kind of swings down at him. I mean, like, you look at that from that angle. Like, that's a full down, like, 12-6, like, chopping motion. I could see how a ref saw that as, like, and by his own words, he said, trying to commit a hard foul, get a hard foul. Get some, or be physical. Like, that's a swat at a guy. And to me, it's like looking back or looking at that right now. What is Stephen A. Smith starting that was a stupid argument. I'm not even gonna repeat it. But this, just looking at that, like he's swinging his arm like dangerously, and I just looking at this, like, I'm not gonna condemn the referees. Like, I'm just not. I just realized, like, my head might have been blocking some of the video, but I don't think it was enough to where y'all couldn't see, like, what happened there. So I'm gonna run this one more time. I mean, like, he looks like he's trying to, you've got to remember where the referee's eyes are too. You know, we're all saying this because we've got a different vantage point from the rest, where maybe we could see things more easily. And still, by his own admission in the press conference, he was trying to go for a hard foul. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's dangerous anyway. You shouldn't be trying to hard foul people. Because what you're telling me is you could say you're not trying to injure them, but if you're trying to commit a hard foul, you're getting physical. To me, you're not playing basketball at that point. You're trying to send a message. You're like that. To me, that's not basketball. And the old people want to talk about like the 90s. 90s basketball sucked because of how much people got hacked and because of the over physicality of it. Like, there's nothing fun about an 80-70 game where guys are just getting sent to the free throw line all the time. There's nothing fun. Like, if I want to see people punch each other or beat each other, like, that's what I watch football for that. I'll watch hockey for that. Or if you want to see people punching each other, go watch boxing or MMA. Like, I mean, I don't mind some physical play, like some body-on-body play, but like that right there, that is a overhead chopping motion. And I get why he got ejected. Like, looking at the rules, like, and knowing the rules, like, sorry, bro. If you wanted to hard foul him, you should have just run through him. You might have still gotten a flagrant, but you wouldn't have gotten ejected. But he physically swung his arm. I'm not going to jump on board with all these people who want to just be outraged. And this is another problem. Because, like, and this is a little bit of social commentary here. Everybody just wants to be outraged about stuff. And the news makes things as over the top as possible. They cover things that make people angry. Social media, it's people amplifying things that make them angry. That's why we're so angry and divided, and why people can't get along, why people can't talk to each other. I mean, some of it is there are definitely people on both sides of, like, a lot of these debates who are, like, fringe lunatics. And I'll say, I feel like there are more on one side than another of these debates. But social media and the way, like, the media conducts itself is the reason, like, everything's just so amped up. Like, Stephen A. Smith is literally the epitome of why, like, our culture is so fractured. Like, him and Skip Bayless, like, they're the poster children, like, in the sports media world. And I would say people like Keith Olbermann is another person. Is like, he's a deranged lunatic. No matter what he's talking about. That's what's wrong with, like, everything. And it just drives me crazy. But getting back to sports, yeah, Jokic, I get why he got ejected. And people can be upset about it, but they're only upset because they're seeing it after the fact. Like, they're getting all these other angles. If you had the ref's viewpoint, you may have very well not. You might have very well, like, at least given a flagrant and maybe even ejected him too. Let's see some of these other. Let's see some of these NBA headlines here. The Blazers are going to interview Mike D'Antoni for their head coaching job. I don't know if he's actually an improvement over Terry Stotts. Like, I think the Blazers made a change at Terry Stotts to make a change, but I don't know if they can actually really improve their team by making a coaching change. Nets are still the title favorite, but underdogs versus Bucks. That's interesting. So yeah, so the Nets also got the floor wiped with them in Game 3 by the Bucks. Well, I say the floor wiped, but the Bucks really did dominate that game. Donovan Mitchell's dealing with an ankle injury. He was still really good in Game 3. And Danny Green is out for the Sixers with a right calf strain for at least 2 weeks. That's actually a big blow for them. But yeah, so let's talk about the Irving injury. So right now they're out, or they're without James Harden because of a hamstring issue. Now Kyrie Irving is out. X-rays are negative, but he has an ankle sprain. And that's big because now they're down to Durant and the rest of the team. And they're without LaMarcus Aldridge. You know, he got hurt before the playoffs even started. And Jeff Green had been out. He's back healthy, but I don't know. This is interesting because the way the Nets got beat in Game 4, like the Middleton and Antetokounmpo were awesome. And they got some big performances from other players like Pat Connaughton. And PJ Tucker had like a really ridiculously hot shooting game. Well, by his standards. So I'm not sure he's going to come out of Jazz Clippers at the moment. It definitely depends on who wins Game 4, because if the Clippers can even it up, then I think it's anyone's series. I guess it really depends. If the Jazz win, could the Clippers make it? Do the Clippers have the talent to make the comeback? Sure. But if the Jazz win Game 4, I'm going to say it's their series to lose. Like I would say it's pretty much like that they're gonna bring it home. But I have a feeling the Clippers are going to win Game 4. And then, of course, you've got the Sixers versus Hawks. And Hawks-Sixers is going to be... I mean, personally, I think the Sixers are probably going to take these next 2 games. I said that earlier. I think that series is over. Obviously, Suns-Nuggets is over. And the Suns get to rest and recuperate while these series the rest of these series play out. Really unfortunate that Kyrie got hurt, but I mean, the funny thing is, we're sitting here like James Harden's played a ton of minutes and has kind of had some issues, like making it through postseasons without, like, maybe not necessarily getting hurt, but without wearing down, and then he has a hamstring issue. Durant's had some injury issues, and then all of them have been out with different maladies this season, and now Irving's down again. So much sports gambling stuff. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I have no problem with people, like, doing whatever, but, and I don't necessarily have a problem with sports gambling in general, but it is annoying, like, how much content is based around this on, like, my news sites now. Oh, and Mike Schmitz, this is a really good article to look into about this year's NBA draft class. What is this? Oh. Something about LeBron James's kid. But yeah, basically this article about this year's NBA draft class, or the top of the draft, they're talking about this, and this isn't just like ESPN and draft, like just Draftniks, like team executives. Lots of people are talking about how this year's NBA draft class is potentially one of the best we've seen. Basically, like, they're saying this could be the most talented one we've seen since the 03 draft. And the 03 draft, there were 4 All-Stars in the top 5 picks. LeBron, Melo, Wade and Bosh, I think. And I mean that draft class was just and there was like talent beyond those guys too. But they're talking about the top of this class, like Cade Cunningham just looks like the prototypical all-around playmaking scoring wing who basically the comparisons I'm seeing is like his ceiling is like Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, but people were talking about and his floor is Chris Middleton. Like Chris Middleton, the last couple games. Well, I mean, and Chris Middleton's having a great year in general. Middleton is a max level player. He's an all-star level player. If Cade Cunningham's floor is a two-way all-star wing, that's awesome. Jalen Green has like Zach LaVine's like athleticism with but seemingly like Bradley Beal's shot making, which Zach LaVine's shot making this year was incredible too. But like they're talking about Green being, and he's a more advanced playmaker at this stage than Beal and LaVine were by far. So Green's got extremely high potential. And then you've got, of course, Jalen Suggs, who the comparisons for him were really interesting. He reminds me of like a Derrick Rose who's a better defender. Not that Rose wasn't like an active defender or whatever, but like Suggs is a grittier, tougher player than Rose, and he's a better shot maker than Rose was. People were comparing him to, I think Drew Holiday was one of the comparisons for Suggs, which is a really good comparison. Let's see. So here's like similarities. So for Cunningham, Doncic, Middleton, Tatum, and I think I can't remember if it was Schmitz or someone else wrote an article and like earlier for ESPN, like talking about those guys, and it might have been Schmitz. Or maybe it was Jonathan Givony for them. But, I mean, that's incredible. Let's see. The next one they talk about is Green. So, and a lot of them see him as like the guy with the most star potential. Like if he hits his ceiling, like there's a lot of people who say like he might have a higher ceiling than Cunningham. I don't know if I totally agree with that. As like a scorer and like in terms of like flashy highlights, I would say sure. But I think Cunningham like has all around like more tools. Like he's 6'8" with like a 7'1", 7'2" wingspan. He's 225. Like he's versatile offensively and defensively. And his shooting percentages at this stage are better than Green as well. But Green was playing in the G League against, like, guys who are already pros and other young guys. But, like, he's playing against grown men, and he was, like, the 4th leading scorer in the G League this season. Or, let's see. No, 10th in G League in scoring. Sorry, 10th. But still, he was 10th in the G League in scoring at 19 years old. 18.7 points in 32.4 minutes. That's really good because I'm pretty sure all the guys above him, it's not even like they're, for the most part, like recent draft picks. I think most of those guys are guys who've been in the league for several years, grown men. So, like, the similarities, Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, a wiry Anthony Edwards. My thing is, I don't think he has the defensive potential of like an Anthony Edwards or even like necessarily a Beal for that matter, because Beal is a little more thicker built, but he's not as long as Green either. So I don't know. But I do like all these prospects. Evan Mobley actually seems to me to be like the best all-around big man prospect we've had in a few years in terms of like his tools. Because like in terms of defending on the perimeter and the pick and roll, he's actually more advanced than most bigs his age because he's really worked on it, working on his outside shot. You see the comparisons here: Anthony Davis, Chris Bosh, Jaren Jackson Jr. And defensively speaking, and his offensive makeup, the way he played in college, actually, he was a higher usage Jaren Jackson. And I think the Chris Bosh comparison is really good too, because he's long and lean, because he's leaner than Jaren Jackson and I believe even Anthony Davis at the same age. Like it being 7 foot 220, Bosh came in the league at like 6'10", 6'11", and more like in that pound range. Although I bet you Mobley has been beefing up, and he's going to beef up over the offseason, put on a little bit of weight. But he has like legit ball handling ability, and I actually think he's a better all around prospect than DeAndre Ayton or James Wiseman. He's not as physically strong, but I think as a player he's better and more. I think he's got better tools for the modern NBA than they do, in terms of like tools that we can already see somewhat developed. Then you've of course got Jalen Suggs, the two-way guard, and he's really well built. So 6'4", 205, 6'6" wingspan. Like he's got a great frame, which is why I think the Drew Holiday comparisons are really good. And he's thick built like 205. Like he's built like a physical wide receiver, which, in case you haven't or you're not aware, his senior year of high school, he was Mr. Football and Mr. Basketball for the state of Minnesota. Like he was elite on the football field and the basketball court. I mean, he's built like a physical wide receiver. And actually, I'd be kind of terrified to see what kind of like wide receiver he would turn into. He is, and this is a great stat from his freshman year at Gonzaga. First high major player, so that's like FBS, or well, they don't have the FBS in college basketball, but like Division I and at like a bigger school. Like Gonzaga is considered a high major school. Their conference is kind of a mid-major conference, but they're an elite program. First high major player to average 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals per 40 minutes since Penny Hardaway in 1992. And Penny Hardaway was incredible before his knees betrayed him in his late 20s. Similarities to Drew Holiday, Brandon Roy. I actually really like the Brandon Roy comp. Roy's a little, or I think it was like 1.5 inches taller, 2 inches taller. But Brandon Roy was one of my favorite players before, once again, his knees just gave out on him in his mid-late 20s. But Roy was like a killer. I mean, people were comparing. There were a lot of people who saw Roy as like a potential heir to Kobe Bryant. And there might be some people who remember that time who are like, what are you talking about? It's like, he was one of my favorite players. And like when I was a kid, like Kobe was my first favorite player. Roy reminded me so much of him. He was so clutch. And he just helped your team win. And Suggs is just a tenacious like competitor. He was the only player on Gonzaga who had a good game against Baylor in the championship game. And then the fifth guy they throw in here is Jonathan Kuminga. That fifth guy, because there's very much a consensus top 4. And there was a point coming into the year, like there were a lot of people who had Kuminga as like the second-rated prospect behind Cunningham. And he's got a great frame, and he's probably the most physically ready in terms of like an athletically gifted player in the class, 6'8", 225, and he's chiseled, 7'1" wingspan. Like, he can come in day one and probably be a positive force defending your Kawhi Leonard's, Paul George's, those guys. Not necessarily like be a stopper, but like potentially be your best option to defend them. But his shooting numbers are all over the place, and I do like the comps, though, to Jaylen Brown, a taller DeMar DeRozan, which is interesting because, like, I look at Brown and DeRozan on opposite ends of the spectrum. Brown has had to really develop his scoring game, but was a physical, like, freak coming into the league and got great on defense, or got good on defense before, and got great on defense before getting good and getting great on offense. DeMar DeRozan's like the opposite. Like, he's always had tools that you would think he'd be a good defensive player, but he never was. Or he's never really been a positive impact defensively. Whereas Kuminga should be. Actually, Kuminga, I think you're looking at a guy who could have like a, like based on his build, kind of like a Kawhi Leonard type impact or a development track, or maybe Michael Bridges, but he doesn't have Michael Bridges like shot making background yet, or playmaking for that matter. So he's interesting, and then there's a few other guys who are also in that discussion. So, because like you have Scotty Barnes, who is drawing a lot of comparisons to like Draymond, a potential Draymond Green type guy, 6'9", 7'3" wingspan, 9'1" standing reach. He's an incredible defender. He's a really good playmaker. His shooting's not great. He's never going to be like your lead scorer, but he could be like a glue guy superstar type, or at least glue guy star type player. And he's just an absolute winner. I feel like there was another guy they compared him to. I'm trying to remember where they got to that. Oh, yeah. Talking about him having like a Tyrese Halliburton type impact this year. I think that's a good way to describe him. Because Tyrese Halliburton, again, seems kind of like a star glue guy type who I still think could be a superstar. I think he's really talented. Yeah, often earning supersized Draymond Green and Simmons, like Ben Simmons comparisons, which is really interesting. But Barnes is like a big guy like that. The thing is, he's a better shooter than Simmons, and I don't think he's as good an athlete, ball handler, what have you, but I don't know. Barnes, I think, has a really high ceiling. Davion Mitchell is kind of like the opposite of these guys. Like, he's, 22 already, or no. Yeah, he's 23. He was a senior at Baylor, but he's so well-rounded, and he's, compared to a lot of guys who are like star, upperclassmen in college, like your Fred VanVleets and Shabazz Napier's, those types of guys. Like, Mitchell's a really good athlete. He's got a really good build in comparison. Like, he's a dogged defender. Like, he's a great all-around player. And I think he'll definitely go in the lottery. I still think he's probably too old to get up into the top 5, though, based on how NBA teams act. That does not mean that he's not a top 5 potential player in the class. And then my man Keon Johnson from the University of Tennessee, out of Shelbyville, Tennessee. In terms of tools, he's as toolsy as any wing prospect in the draft. He's probably more raw than all those other guys, other than maybe Kuminga. but he showed some crazy shot making ability at times last year. He's as competitive as anyone. He's got incredible physical tools. He was like a top shortstop prospect in the country too, along with being an elite basketball player. And I believe he also had a football background too. He's got a lot of upside. It's like I could see him pushing Kuminga for number 5. I feel like he's probably going to fall into the back half of the top 10. But I think he's the kind of player that a team should take a game or should definitely take the chance on like developing. Let's see some other stuff here. Stephen Gilmore skips Pat's minicamp. Oh, wow. Crowder's actually going to take that pay cut to stay with the Jets. So I was reading that he was having a dispute, so he hadn't showed up to Jets workouts yet. Uh-oh. Jags Lawrence with a hamstring issue has been limited in minicamp. Oh, and there's some more Le'Veon Bell drama. We'll hit this. We'll talk about this after because I saw the headline. So Le'Veon Bell criticized Andy Reid, or said he would never play for. He didn't want to ever play for Andy Reid again because he got asked, I guess, on social media about potentially going back to the Chiefs, and he answered with, "I'll never play for Reid again." And I guess he was frustrated with his role and whatnot, despite injuries to like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and whatnot. But my thing is, if you were the best player at your position, Reid would have played you. And I just think that Le'Veon Bell, what has happened with Le'Veon Bell is exactly what I predicted when he sat out that last season with the Steelers after getting franchised and turned down a contract offer that ended up being bigger than what he got from the Jets. And he's sucked ever since. So, he's since apologized that he shouldn't have aired that or his frustrations publicly, and he doesn't, like, personally, like, as a person, he doesn't have a problem with Andy Reid, whatever, and respects him, whatever. But I think Le'Veon Bell was told by his agent, like, hey, if you want to keep getting, like, the chance to get paid, shut up or you're not going to get another job. And maybe apologize. Because everybody respects Andy Reid. Like, that was just stupid on his part. And I don't believe he's actually sorry, because he's done this in the past. You know, he had a problem with the Steelers. And I'm sorry, Mike Tomlin's has coached the Steelers to a Super Bowl win. He got them back to a second Super Bowl. They've been a really good team pretty much every year that Tomlin has been the coach. So I mean, Le'Veon Bell doesn't know how to judge character or quality of coaches. So let's see. Wide receiver Jamison Crowder agrees to pay cut to remain with the New York Jets, and their receiver room is loaded now, or at least, like, they have a lot of, good, like, solid options. But he was going to be the 16th highest paid receiver based on cap hit this year. And I don't think almost all of his money based on the cap, he's like an $11.4 million, I think, cap hit, or at least he was. But his like base salary for the year was like $10 million, and it wasn't guaranteed. Like so he would have been out like $10 or more million, or around $10 million if they'd cut him. So and the thing is, like, Crowder sure has been their leading receiver for like the past 2 years. He had 699 yards receiving last year, and that's not worth. It's like there's no way he's worth $10 million. Like he's a really good slot receiver, but he was in the final year of a 3-year, $28.5 million contract. Details haven't been immediately available. The word was they were trying to cut him, or like cut his, him down by like half. And my thing is, with this wide receiver market, if they cut him, he probably wasn't going to get half. So they're still among the league leaders in cap space at about $27 million. But you also have to think about the market. Like, just because you have money doesn't mean you should spend it, because you can roll over cap space. Crowder, who turns 28 on Thursday, skipped the voluntary portion of the offseason as the two sides haggled over his contract. Jets mandatory minicamp starts Tuesday. He was optimistic a deal would get done, saying a few days ago that Jameson is definitely got a role here, which the people this is going to impact most, probably Keelan Cole and Elijah Moore. Cole has some history as a slot. People see Moore as a slot receiver, and Moore has been incredible. They also have Braxton Berrios, who's looked really good in camp, and I've always had tabbed since he came out of Miami, as a potential really good like slot player. But Moore can play on the outside. They've got Corey Davis, who they brought in. Cole also has played a lot on the outside. You've got Denzel Mims, who they drafted in the second round last year. Obviously, they want him to improve. They want him to play on the out, or be one of their main outside players. So even though he will be back, it'll be interesting to see if his role diminishes during the regular season. Moore, selected 34th overall, has impressed coaches in off-season practices. Like Crowder, he's a slot receiver. Yeah. In another contract-related development, safety Marcus May reported to the facility Monday ahead of minicamp. May, who signed his franchise tag tender of $10.6 million earlier in the offseason, skipped the voluntary practices as the two sides attempted to negotiate a long-term deal. If they can't get to a deal, May will play for the amount of the tender. I'm going to say they're going to get a deal done with him, and I'm going to say he's going to come in somewhere between 12 and 14 million. I'm going to say May's going to get a 4-year deal, a 4 or 5-year deal, worth probably around 13 million a year, if I had to guess. But after trading Jamal Adams, they need to sign May. And they should sign him before Adams signs his deal, because that's going to raise the safety market. Because is it John Simmons? I think it's John Simmons. Simmons for the Packers. He signed I think it was a 4-year, $61 million deal this offseason, which put him among the highest paid safeties in the league. I remember the Titans, when we signed Kevin Byard to an extension on his contract. It was like a 5-year, $70 million deal on top. So, but it was like a 6-year contract with whatever he had remaining on his rookie deal attached, or with $70 million added on, or something like that, I think. So it's really like a 6-year, like $71 million deal, something like that, if I'm remembering that correctly. So May's not that good, but May is really good. So I'm going to say he'll get somewhere around that Simmons contract, maybe a little less. Because what's 4 years, 61? That's 15 mil a year. Which Simmons, I can't remember if his was signed before, if they signed him to a franchise tag before they signed him to that or not. But anyway, Simmons got a big contract. And it was, he deserved it. He's one of the best safeties in the league. But I thought the John Johnson contract, the Browns got him, I think, for like 3 years, 36, 3 years, 39 mil. It was somewhere between, it was either $11 million a year or $13 million a year. Somewhere in between $11 and $13 million for John Johnson the third. And he was awesome for the Rams. I think he's probably the most underrated safety in the NFL in that I think he's one of the top safeties in the league, but he's treated like in free agency, he was treated as less valuable than Simmons of the Broncos. And I don't know if I think he's probably as valuable. But that's just me. So May's money's probably going to come in between Johnson and Simmons. Let's see. With that being said, that's about all I've got for today. I think, that's basically it. Oh, I did want to mention, the NASCAR All-Star Race had kind of a hilarious, intro segment. So they had the All-Star Race at Texas Motor Speedway. I wonder if, let's see, racing. Yeah, so, this might be racing outside of NASCAR. Let me see. There we go, NASCAR home. So yeah, so they had the All-Star race yesterday, and so the intros for the All-Star race yesterday were hilarious. I was kind of hoping they had maybe some pictures of the intros. So they're at Texas Motor Speedway. They had a saloon entrance set up on the stage, and they come walking out of saloon doors. A bunch of them had cowboy hats and stuff. And they had the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders lined up on either side of the steps down. And they had the crews rolled the cars out of a entryway that looked like the entryway to a high-end corral. Barn and corral. And it was just oh, this is hilarious. And they had some band playing I think when it started up they were playing Tush by ZZ Top. They also had and some other stuff like Life is a Highway, and I recognize that one. And then so they did a few kind of practice rounds or practice laps, kind of the warm-up laps around leading up to the green flag. They had Sammy Hagar perform I Can't Drive 55. And the song ended at the green flag. It was too good. In just from an entertainment perspective, I thought it was hilariously great. Although it was so hot, because it is stinking hot here in the state of Texas. The heat index yesterday was 103. For today, it's 105. And I'm in Beaumont, Texas. So this Texas Motor Speedway is up, I think it's either in Fort Worth or between Fort Worth and Dallas. The track temp was like 145, 146 degrees, which basically for like asphalt surfaces, it was for those cars, it was almost like being on ice. It was so slick. The track conditions between the rubber and the asphalt, guys were just spinning out. Most of it's like, and a lot of it was like there was no like not a lot of contact on it, but like you'd have guys just spin out in the corners, because they couldn't keep traction. So it was a really interesting race, and of course Kyle Larson won. He's won the last two Cup Series races. I can't remember what they call it. I think it's the Monster Energy Cup Series now. Because it had been sprint for a while. So he's actually won 3 straight races now, including the last 2 Cup events and then this All-Star race. And he beat his teammate, Chase Elliott, because they were on the same racing team, Hendrick Motorsports. And Chase won the All-Star race and the Cup Series last season. So that was really interesting. I'm trying to remember. I wonder what the like standings are like right now. I've kind of started following again. I used to be a huge NASCAR fan, actually. I was a big Jeff Gordon fan as a kid, and then once they started like the Cara DeMara stuff, and like while I was in high school, I kind of fell off. And it was also that period of time where it was like Jimmy Johnson won like, what was it, like 5 straight, and like 7 of like 9 Cup championships. It was like, or 6 out of like 8 or 6 out of 7. It was like, it was ridiculous. Like it was so boring. Not to mention his crew chief, actually, Knaus, used to always get suspended, and then they stopped suspending him for cheating, and then all of a sudden, like, Johnson just started winning everything. Or winning it, like, every year. So Larson right now has, like, a commanding lead in the points, and it's actually kind of crazy. So, because Larson drives for Hendrick, the third place guy, Bowman, is driving for Hendrick, and actually he's in Jimmy Johnson's old car since he retired. Chase Elliott, I believe, is in Gordon's old car. And I'm trying to remember. I almost feel like Byron. Yeah. So 4 of the top 5 guys are Hendrick's Motorsports cars. Oh, actually, Byron. That's right. Byron's in Gordon's old car. Elliott's in a different car. Yeah, Elliott got like his dad's. I think like Hendrick and who was it? So Chase Elliott's dad drove the number 9 car for a long time for I'm trying to remember the name of the motorsports team, but it was the motorsports team. Oh, dadgummit. It was basically kind of like run by Jeff Gordon's like crew chief from like early in his career. But so that number used to be on another team, but I guess they were able to get number 9 for Elliott or whatever. Let's see. Bowman, like I said, I think 48. So Larson, yeah, that's right. Because Larson, when he came up, it was like Kyle Busch's old car. I think he drives the number 5. Well, is it going to load his... Oh, that's Kyle Larson. I don't know why it won't show like his car number or team affiliation. Huh. That's kind of weird. That's weird that they don't have like what car he's driving. But anyway. So that's crazy. So like the 4 of the top 5 guys are Hendricks guys. Crazy. Um anyway, this I just went down a random rabbit hole at the end of this thing. What team's Blaney drive for? He's also Team Penske. Okay. So he and Logano are teammates. It's interesting because some of the numbers are like on different teams now. Bush is still Joe Gibbs, right? Yeah. It's really crazy kind of looking at the teams now. Okay, so Keselowski, Team Penske. Huh. Who is Christopher Bell? Like I said, I've just kind of gotten back in and like we've got all these new guys. Does he not have a team? Huh, it doesn't have like his team listed. I probably could go to like NASCAR site and get all the information, but like I said, I was about to get offline anyway. Front Row Motorsports. And there's some new like teams that I've never heard of. Like I've never heard of Front Row Motorsports. Hamlin's down at 12. Who's Harvick driving for now? So, oh yeah, that's right. He moved to Stuart Haas Racing, which, and that's interesting. I can't remember how long he's been Stuart Haas, but I thought he was number 4 like before he moved there, but maybe I'm wrong. Austin Dillon, because Austin Dillon's in the 3. Yeah, that's Richard Childress. Dude, man, that guy looks like. I'm sorry, like that dude kind of looks like the biggest douchebag. I do not know why. Oh, that guy looks borderline insufferable. Oh, I'm a terrible guy for saying that. Oh, man. Of course, guy I clicked on earlier, Joey Logano, most punchable face in the sport. Tyler Reddick. Man, we got a lot of, like, new names. 31, Tyler Reddick. Man, Richard Childress has kind of slipped down because, like, I mean, and heck, like Roush Racing, like Roush Fenway Racing used to be like one of the top teams, and now Chris Boucher, he's in Matt Kenseth's old car, 17. He's their highest ranked driver. This is kind of sad. Because, like, Kyle Busch is 7th. You've got Denny Hamlin at 12th. Those are both Joe Gibbs Racing. And those, Joe Gibbs Racing, has been a staple of my lifetime. Heck, we got a... This guy is apparently, like, one of the most popular drivers in the sport right now. And he races for Wood Brothers. Huh. Good for the Wood Brothers getting a guy who's actually kind of decent. 17th? Ricky Stenhouse. Who does he drive for? JTG Daughtry. Yeah, I mean, there's so many teams now that, like, I've never heard of. Ross Chastain. They don't even have any information on this guy. Like, dang. Which I think this is his first year up in the big leagues. Bubba Wallace. Evernham Motorsports. That was the group I was thinking about. Ray Evernham. So Bill Elliott used to drive for Evernham at 43. Now the 43, I thought that was a different team too than Evernham. Daniel Suarez. Well, if it'll click. Doesn't say who he races for. Ryan Newman. And so Ryan Newman's in the 6 car, which used to be like, well, that was Mark Martin's car for a really long time. And of course, Newman had that crazy brutal crash at Daytona last year. And it's good to see him racing again. Ryan Preece. So another JTG car. 37. So and like JTG is like must be a relatively new team. Or at least to the main stage. And then Eric Jones is in Tony Stewart's old ride. And I guess between then Joey Logano and the number 20. Huh. I mean, a lot of guys whose names I'm not super familiar with. You got Cole Carter. 41. So that's Stuart Haas. So Stuart Haas now has the 41 car. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember. There used to be a team that had like 40, 41, I think, and 42. Or it was 41, 42, and 43. And I guess maybe Stuart Haas bought that team, or at least those car numbers. Let's see who this Briscoe guy is. Yep, no info for him either. So it must be like his first season or first stint up top. Eric Almirola, he's been around for a while. So he drives the 10 for Stuart Haas. So they have the 10 car. Corey LaJoy, doesn't have a team for him either. And some of these guys could legitimately just be racing independent or whatever. But that doesn't seem like super likely. Another guy, don't have any team info. Or like car info for that matter. That's the other weird thing. Like some of these like just no car info. The 00 Starcom Racing, never heard of them. And there are several teams that definitely seem like they're just gone. Or at least like they definitely don't seem as big as they used to be. Or successful. I mean, a bunch of guys here that just don't have any information. Jamie McMurray's still around? Huh. Wonder how old that picture is of him. Man, I remember when like he was just a hotshot new guy when I was a kid. Man, this guy doesn't even have a picture. Man. And I mean, we're down at like 35. Like, there are 43 guys in every race. Or at least there used to be. Have they cut down like the size of the field? Because like only 41 guys have points. Have they cut down like how many drivers are in a race now? Like, this is wild. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to NASCAR.com. I am so curious now. I don't know why I'm capitalizing for a .com domain. Man, my phone is just blowing up right now. I'm glad I just checked my phone. Because, I need to answer this. So, Face ID like works half the time, doesn't work half the time. Got multiple group messages going here. So the Brother John Griffin, our worship pastor at Calvary Baptist, just asked me to sing for Sunday. That's really cool. I'm usually on a drum kit, so. So it started with one, and then people started responding, and that created a second group message. Okay. So anyway, NASCAR.com. Let's see. This is an interesting layout here. I don't care about the schedule. I'm looking for like the standings. NASCAR Cup Series. So they don't. I guess they don't have a sponsor now for the Cup Series because it had been Monster. Because the secondary series is called the Xfinity Series. Huh. Weird. I don't care about. I'm looking just for the standings here. You think it would be easier to find like. Oh, there we go. So let's see here. Wait a second. Now, this is very different than the standings I saw just a second ago on ESPN. Because it had Hamlin like way down lower. Was ESPN standings like wrong? Or maybe they were behind? But Larson's point total, I think, was exactly the same. I'm so confused. Actually, I'm going to go back a couple pages. Let's... 2021 NASCAR Cup Series standings. Kyle Larson, number 1 with 617 points. Oh, they've got it. Do they have it organized stupidly? Well, it's definitely in a weird order because... Yeah, so they've got it organized by wins, like sorted by wins, not points. These people are idiots. ESPN is just full of idiots. So Denny Hamlin's like got a 50-point lead just about in points with no wins. He just doesn't have any DNFs, and it seems like every driver has at least like 1 or 2 DNFs up at the top there. See, we've got some names like that weren't even coming up in the other thing, like James Johnson, who I've never heard of. So Corey LaJoie drives the 7, and it's a Chevy. So what team's he with? Spire Motorsports. Okay. Well, anyway. No more. I'm not going to bore y'all guys with more NASCAR or whatever. I just got randomly curious. So, anyway, with that being said, thank you all for tuning in to the stream today. I appreciate you. I'm going to go, do some laundry. So enjoy the rest of your Monday. If you like the show, please hit the like button. If you want more, please feel free to subscribe, hit the bell notification, you know the stuff. And please comment if you had a difference of opinion over like the Nikola Jokic ejection. Comment on the video. If you think I'm a moron for thinking that, Jokic, or that the refs weren't out of line in ejecting Jokic. I'm not saying that he should have been ejected. I'm saying I don't think they were out of line. Yeah. Oh, and how about this? Comment like who you think is the best quarterback in the NFL this season. Because I had an interesting debate with someone about that topic, and it was kind of shocking because like the answer was not Patrick Mahomes, it was not Aaron Rodgers, and it wasn't Tom Brady. Because like I don't think Brady's the best QB in the league right now, but he's like the greatest of all time. So, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'll save it for tomorrow. Anyway, have a great Monday. I will see you tomorrow. I think it's like I will say this. I did mention Friday. I was thinking about cutting back on streaming days. I don't know if I want to do that or not. Although I will not be I will be chaperoning a camp next week, so I won't be streaming. So I'm streaming, 4 times this week. And I will not be here. And then it's like 2 weeks after that, I won't be here. So my streaming is going to be kind of like depending on whether I'm, home or not. So anyway, y'all have a great rest of your Monday. I will be back.